Main Street ROI. We've done quite a few different webinars with Phil, and he always does a great job. And today's another great topic. We're going to be talking about SEO and kind of the new some rules to follow when thinking about SEO. So to get started, I'll go through and kind of introduce Conversa, kind of who we are, and what we do and why we host these webinars, and then I'll turn the time over to Phil, and he'll go through his presentation. So first off, kind of Conversa, kind of who we are, what we do, why do we host these webinars on a regular basis. So Conversa, we're a software company. We provide a marketing software tool that allows marketers to track their inbound phone calls back to their different marketing campaigns that they're running. So we have the ability to track organic campaigns, paid search campaigns, offline campaigns, whatever it might be. And then the unique thing that Conversa does is we couple that with analyzing the phone call. So we can get you data not only on how many phone calls have come from a specific campaign, but of those phone calls, how many of those actually turn into a sales opportunity. And so that's kind of what we do. The reason we host these webinars on a weekly basis, and we invite thought leaders like Phil on, is we like to create a community that kind of follows Conversa around kind of interesting different marketing topics and share kind of that knowledge with our audience. So anytime that we've kind of come across interesting thought leaders and those people are kind of thinking about things in a different way or in a new way or in an interesting way, we like to present that type of data to our customer base and our database to kind of hopefully to kind of give back. So today, one of the questions I always get is, I may have to run kind of 20 minutes in or something like that. Are you guys going to record the webinar? The answer to that is yes. We do record these webinars. We will upload that to conversa.com. We can email that out to you also. So don't worry if you're looking for a recording. We'll be able to get that over to you at some time. We'll also have someone follow up with you if you have an interest in any of the topics that we're talking about today and want to further explore those. We can reach out to you and set up a time to speak one-on-one, and we'll do that after the webinar. Other type agenda items, how we're going to go here is Phil will go through his presentation. We encourage, as you go through the presentation, you may have questions. If you do have questions, please submit those. You have a little control panel on the right-hand side where you can submit questions. And Phil's going to go through his presentation, and at the end, we're going to have a Q&A session where we can answer a lot of those questions. So please interact as much as you want on that, and we'd love to be able to answer as many questions as we can at the end of the presentation. Again, for those who just joined, if you're having any audio or visual problems, you can chat those in also via that control panel. So with that, Phil, I'm going to kind of turn the time over to you, and I'll let you kind of introduce yourself and then jump into your presentation.
Okay, great. Thanks for the intro, and thanks to the Conversa team for organizing this presentation. So we're going to be talking about the death of old school SEO. So we'll talk about what old school tactics no longer work, and then we'll dive into the 5 rules you should be following, or 5 steps. So housekeeping, which was already taken care of. Just want to reiterate that you can post questions in the GoToWebinar window, and we'll have a Q&A at the end to address those questions. I just always remind everyone to turn off distractions. I know personally I get the most out of these webinars when I am not also checking email or scrolling through my Facebook feed. All right, so here's what we're going to cover today. I'll talk about some important Google updates that I think everyone should be familiar with, and these are some kind of key milestones in Google's algorithm that, because of those changes, affect how you have to approach SEO. I already mentioned we'll talk about some SEO tactics that you should avoid because of those Google updates. I'll also go through a couple tactics you can use to get ranked very quickly, actually in as little as 30 days. So most SEO does take time to actually see results and see big swings in your rankings, but there are a couple tactics that I will walk through. Then we'll go through the 5 rules or 5 steps you need to follow. And I also, at the end, have a special offer for all the attendees. So again, my name is Phil Frost. I'm the founder of Main Street ROI, and our business provides digital marketing services, primarily SEO, Google AdWords, Facebook ads, Bing ads, as well as email marketing. So we provide the services to businesses, and we also provide a lot of training. We do a lot of free webinars like this webinar today, and we also have some paid courses on our website. If you go to Main Street ROI/training, you can see a lot of our paid courses, and we do those on a monthly basis. And my thought leadership in this industry has been featured in Forbes, Inc., Amex, as well as Mashable. This is my favorite slide of the presentation. This is my beautiful family. We've got my daughter on the left. That's Violet. She is 4 years old. That's my wife, Erin, in the middle. My chubby son on the right, Emmett. This was taken on his 2nd year birthday. Earlier this month, April 2nd, was his birthday. And if you've been on previous webinars, you probably saw a similar picture because we took this picture on his 1st year birthday at the same spot. This was at a beer garden in the Upper West Side of Manhattan, which is where I live. All right, before we dive into kind of the nitty-gritty details of SEO, I think it's really important for everyone to understand the history of Google, and this will really make SEO much more easy to understand, and it will make those old school tactics easier to understand as well. So way back in the day, I can barely remember this, there was a search engine called Alta Vista. This is before Google. And back then, SEO was very simple. Basically, all you had to do was put the keyword that you wanted to rank for on your page more than anyone else was putting it on that on their page, and you would likely rank high in the Alta Vista search engine. So if you wanted to rank for day spa, you would just put that phrase on your page, let's say 5 times, 10 times, 20 times, just load it up a bunch of times on that page, and you were likely to rank high. So it's super easy, but because of that, because it was easy, it was also the search results were full of spam. So if you remember, search engines in the early days had a lot of trouble with spam on the first page. I remember as a kid, you could do certain searches that were, totally normal searches, but actually porn would show up on the first page of those search engines. So that was a big problem just because of the way that the algorithm worked. It was pretty simple. So then Google entered the market, and they came with a much more robust algorithm. And it's actually fairly straightforward. What they did was they looked at not only the words on your website, but they also looked at another factor. They looked at how many other websites are linking to your website. So that was that little shift in the algorithm made a huge difference because it was harder to trick Google and get your site to be on the first page. So again, they were looking at the words on your page to make sure you were relevant, which is the same as what AltaVista was doing, but they were also looking at how many other websites were linking to your website. And basically a link to your website is like a vote in your favor. So if you have 10 other websites linking to your website, that's like 10 votes, and maybe your competitor might have 100 links to their website, and that's 100 votes, and Google sees that as basically a more popular or a more authoritative website. So it's an extremely simplified version, but that is that's how Google's algorithm works. It was obviously much simpler back in 1998, and because of that ingenious little tweak to the algorithm, Google became the #1 search engine, and they really haven't looked back since. They've dominated the market. And the final point I want to make, is the key takeaway, is that Google depends on their search ad revenue. And that's a fairly misunderstood fact, I think, because a lot of businesses that I talk to, a misconception out there is that people don't actually click on ads. And Google would strongly disagree with that because their business was built on search ad revenue. So that's people going to Google, searching a keyword like dentist in Manhattan, and then there are going to be advertisers on the top. There's anywhere from 3 to 4 ads at the top of the page. People do click on those ads, and those are Google AdWords ads, and Google makes the majority of the revenue from those ads. Now that's an important point because the reason people go to Google and continue to keep going back to Google is because the search results are really good, and they're better in a lot of people's opinions versus Bing and Yahoo and some of the other search engines. That's because Google works really hard on their algorithm and weeds out the businesses that don't belong on the first page. So basically, spam and low quality websites are a threat to Google's business model, and they're a big threat because Google depends on that search ad revenue. Anytime there's any type of spam on the first page, that's a huge risk for Google because the users that are seeing that spam are more likely then to stop using Google, go to another search engine, and then Google would lose that revenue. So just keep that in mind. Google depends on that search revenue, and that's really why they hire some of the smartest people to work on their algorithm and make sure that spam doesn't get on the first page. All right, so with that in mind, I mentioned we'll go through some of the milestone Google algorithm updates. And this first one here is called the Panda update. If you've done research in SEO, then you've definitely come across the Panda update. And this was Google's response to get rid of websites that give a bad user experience. And that could be low quality content, so just low quality, poorly written web pages. Again, that's a threat to Google's entire business. So Google doesn't want those pages to rank high. And they also don't want pages to rank high that have bad navigation. So again, that's a bad user experience, and that's really what the Panda update was targeting. Get rid of those websites that give a bad user experience. And this next one is another popular update, and there have been a lot of these. The Penguin update, they keep re-releasing it. This one was to basically target websites that were building links to their website and getting links unnaturally. So in an ideal world, Google's algorithm works great when people are linking to other websites for legitimate reasons because they like your website. Now, if you take that to the extreme, and businesses did this, you can actually you can go out and buy, let's say, 10 new domains, create some websites, create a blog on each of those 10 websites, and then have blog articles that then link to your main website. Businesses basically did that, and they started to get hundreds, thousands of links to their website, which made them look super popular. But the reality was they were just creating those links themselves. They weren't real websites that were voting for their website. So Google figured that out and released this Penguin update to try to get rid of those websites that really didn't belong on the first page of Google. This third update is Google+, and I just wanted to bring this to your attention because Google+ was launched, and then they kind of took resources away from it, and then they kind of relaunched it recently. And this is really just to highlight what I believe is the rise in importance of social media signals, and that's a controversial topic in the SEO world. No one knows for sure how social media signals impact SEO, but I do believe social plays a role and will continue to play a role into the future. And last but not least, it's important to be aware of the Hummingbird update, which I believe was a couple years ago. And this was basically in response to the fact that a lot of people are talking to their phones now and doing searches in a more conversational way. And because of that, Google had to understand context and synonyms. And if you think about it from a machine's perspective or the code's perspective, it's kind of hard to understand context and synonyms. So if you are walking outside and you type into your phone or you talk into your phone and do a Google search for best food nearby, to humans like you and me, that makes perfect sense. You're looking for some restaurants that are nearby, or best burgers nearby. You're looking for a burger joint that's near your actual location. So Google had to basically completely overhaul their algorithm to understand context and synonyms. And the key takeaway here is that they can now understand that, and Google's not just literally taking words and matching those words to pages. They're actually translating those words and then matching the translation to what they think should be the best search result. All right, now let's dive into the 3 old school tactics to avoid. The first one is related to the Panda update that I mentioned before. And what I want you to make sure you do not do is over-optimize your web pages. And this is an old school tactic where you may have learned or heard that you should put your keyword on your page multiple times and make sure it's in the copy with a certain, let's say, keyword density. And while some of that is true, you really don't need to focus when you're writing the content on your page. You really don't need to overly focus on putting that keyword in the copy. If you're doing SEO correctly and you're optimizing a page for a target keyword, then if you write naturally about that topic, you're naturally going to incorporate that keyword. And that's really the key takeaway. Don't try to unnaturally stuff keywords onto a page. That's only going to hurt you from an SEO perspective. And the last point here is to just make sure you're providing valuable information. There are a lot of shortcuts you can take as far as SEO goes. You can get into spinning content, repurposing content, and when you start going down that road, you're creating less and less valuable information and publishing less valuable information on your site. Anytime you're going down that path, you definitely want to turn around, because it's more important to create and publish the most valuable information that you can on your site, because that's ultimately what Google wants. And we'll get to this later. You really want to be partnering with Google and giving them the best information, because that's ultimately what they want to show on the first page of Google to help their users to maximize their own revenue. All right, the second old school tactic you want to avoid is self-created links. I mentioned this when I was talking about the Penguin update, and I'll just load this up here. You don't want to, first of all, you don't want to buy links. You don't want to buy links for the sole purpose of SEO. It is okay technically to pay for something and actually get a link in return. There are legitimate reasons for that. You know, press releases are technically buying links, so you don't need to worry about you know, whether or not this is going to get you into trouble. Just realize that if you do pay for a link or get a link in return for money, and Google knows that you're getting that link in return for money, Google's not going to place any value of that link. So it's not worth it from an SEO perspective, but there could be valid business reasons to pay for a link. For example, advertising is essentially paying for, let's say, a banner ad or a text link ad, but it's not going to help for SEO. You also don't want to add links from irrelevant websites, and that should be fairly obvious. I'll use the same example. Let's say you have a day spa. Probably doesn't make sense to have lots of links from car dealerships, for example. Google would see that, and it might be a red flag that you're doing something a little shady. The next item here is related to anchor text, and I've got the example with the blue underlined phrase day spa. That is an example of anchor text. Whenever text is linked up, and if you can click on it and then it sends you over to that website, that phrase that is hyperlinked is what's called anchor text. And Google looks at the anchor text and determines and uses that to determine what that page actually is about, or what's it relevant to. So if you have lots of links that say day spa, Google will learn that your site is relevant to that phrase, and that helps you rank higher for that particular phrase. Now the warning here, now that you understand anchor text and how that works with SEO, you can take that to the extreme, and you could get hundreds or thousands of links that say day spa or whatever business you're in. They could all say car dealer, and that used to actually work, and you would rank high for those keywords where you had a lot of anchor text. But now, because of the Penguin update, that's actually a red flag for Google, because it's totally unnatural. It's not natural for hundreds or thousands of websites to use the exact same anchor text. It's just highly unlikely, and Google knows that. And when they see it, that can be a reason for them to penalize your website, and your rankings will actually drop. And ultimately, with links, it's best to focus on sharing content to get links versus trying to create them yourself. All right, the third and final old school tactic to avoid is unnecessary SEO web pages. And this is related to the Hummingbird update. I mentioned they understand context and synonyms now, so you don't have to create a page for every single different keyword variation. So what you want to do is actually, you want to do your keyword research. We'll talk about this later. and then you want to group all those similar keywords together, and you want to optimize a page, one page on your site for a group of similar keywords. And you really don't need multiple pages for very similar keywords, like this example here, day spa in NYC versus NYC day spa. Again, back in the old school days of SEO, the recommendation would be to create separate pages, and that would actually be a good tactic, because you would have a page specifically for each individual keyword. But again, since the Hummingbird update and all the future updates, that's not necessary, and that can actually do more harm than good. So you really want to focus on optimizing a page for all of the very similar keywords. Now, I'm showing this here as an example of what can happen if you create a lot of low quality web pages on your site. I think this was about a year ago. We worked with a client, and before we started working with them, they went out and created I think about 20 different subdomains on their site that were all copies of their regular website, and they were just trying to target different locations. So this was not in New York, but the example for New York would be having, let's say, a Queens.Main Street ROI site, a Brooklyn.Main Street ROI site, and a Bronx.Main Street ROI site, and trying to get your site to rank high in those different locations. That's what this client did, and because they were providing little or no value, because it was just duplicated content on these different sites and different subdomains, Google sent them this message that basically says they have a manual spam action, and they lost all of their rankings until we were able to fix that problem for them. So this is just basically a heads up to make sure you don't go down the path of creating lots of low quality content or lots of duplicate content, because it's going to lead to you getting a manual action. I do have 3 predictions as far as where SEO is headed. This one is a very safe prediction. Google will continue to fight SEO spam. Again, any SEO spam is a threat to Google's business model. It means that they will potentially lose lots of revenue for their business. So you don't want to be doing any keyword stuffing. You don't want to get any unnatural inbound links to your site, and you don't want to build a lot of unnecessary pages for very similar keywords. Now, if you're not aware of this, you definitely should be. Mobile and local signals are becoming more and more important as far as SEO is concerned. So just a quick fact on that, there's more people going to Google on their mobile devices than they are going to Google on desktop devices. So just mobile is a critical factor now for most businesses, and it's becoming more and more important for SEO. Google's actually moving eventually to what's called the mobile first index. And what that means is Google will actually look at the mobile version of your website first, and that's kind of their home base, rather than looking at the desktop version first. So in the history of Google, ever since I started back in 2006, all you really worried about was your desktop version. You made sure that was optimized. Well, that all is going to flip in the near future when Google finally rolls out their mobile first index. You're first going to need to worry about your mobile site, make sure that's optimized, and then secondly, optimize your desktop version. And finally, I already mentioned this, social signals, I believe, will become more and more important. Ultimately, I hope I've made this clear. SEO is not about tricking Google. That's a huge misconception. A lot of businesses think, oh, I just need to find some tricks to get to be #1 in Google, but that's really not what SEO is all about. It's more about partnering with Google, thinking about how can you provide valuable information for Google's users, because that's what Google wants to do. Google wants to match up the most valuable information online with their users to ensure that those users keep coming back to Google and ultimately keep clicking on ads to drive up their revenue. All right, so now let's dive into the 5 steps, or 5 R's. The first R is research. And more specifically, we're talking about keyword research. And the tool I recommend is Google's Keyword Planner tool. To get access to that tool, you do unfortunately need to have a Google AdWords account. I say unfortunately, not because I don't recommend Google AdWords, but because it's kind of an annoyance if you're not already advertising in Google AdWords. You have to then jump through that hoop of creating a Google AdWords account. I think they even force you to enter a credit card, but I do want to clarify, you do not have to spend any money in Google AdWords. You just have to create an account, and then that allows you access to the Keyword Planner tool. And we're going to use this tool for SEO. You can also use it for Google AdWords, but I do want to clarify we're talking about SEO here. So what you do, you get access to Google Planner tool, and you use it basically like a thesaurus. You type in the keywords you think your prospective customers are searching for, and then the tool will tell you how many times those phrases are searched every month, as well as additional relevant phrases. So that's why it's like a thesaurus. It'll show you other similar phrases. And the key takeaways here are you want to find the keywords that have the most search volume, so greater than 0. If it has 0 search volume, that means no one is searching for that phrase. So it doesn't really make sense to focus on those keywords. And the second takeaway here is to focus on what's called buying intent keywords rather than research intent keywords. And I have an example here, just sticking with that day spa example. Hopefully this will make it clear the difference here. There's the keyword day spa in NYC versus someone searching for best facial for acne. So in the first example there, day spa in NYC, that one has a lot more what's called buying intent. The person searching for day spa in NYC is more likely to schedule an appointment and go to a day spa than someone searching best facial for acne. Now, best facial and acne is more of a research-oriented keyword. There's going to be more people searching it, and there may be, or there's definitely some people in that group of people searching that keyword that would go to a day spa, but there are more people in that group that are just doing research. So with that in mind, you want to focus your efforts on the keywords that are most likely to result in sales for your business. So you want to initially focus on those buying intent, like the day spa in NYC, get optimized for those keywords, and then later on focus on a keyword like best facial for acne. And then lastly here, you want to answer the question, do you actually deserve to be #1? And by that I mean, do you actually offer that information on your site? Are you really the best source for that info? Do you actually have that product or that service? And if you don't, if you can't really honestly answer yes to that question, then you're in for an uphill battle. right, so that's keyword research. That's identifying, at least first, you want to identify those buying intent keywords. And next, it comes down to relevance. You need to make your website relevant for those keywords that you found in step 1. This is really marketing 101. It's kind of the first thing you learn in marketing. You want to match the message to the market. So if the market is searching for that keyword, you want to match that with the same congruent message on your web page. I mentioned this before. When you're doing your keyword research, you'll find hundreds. You can even get crazy and find thousands of keywords. And then it comes down to organizing those keywords into basically similar phrases and phrases that have similar intent. Group those together and then pick one page on your site that you will optimize for that group. And when you go through this process, you may even find that you don't have a page on your site. So that would require you then to actually develop that page so that you could optimize your site for those keywords. And then what does it mean to optimize? In the most basic sense, you want to edit the title of the page, and I am showing the HTML there. That's the less than sign, title greater than sign, and then the words in between those HTML tags is what's called the page title. And then there are headers on a page, and I put the HTML there. That's the H1, H2, H3 HTML tags. Headers are basically what breaks up content on the site, and those, as you can imagine, if you think about when you write a paper and you have headings on a paper, or if you think about chapters in a book, those headings are obviously really important, and Google places more weight on those headers than the regular content on the page. So that's why you want to make sure you put your target keyword or a variation of your target keyword in the header, as well as the title. And then we talked about the body copy. As long as you are picking one page per group of keywords, you're just going to naturally incorporate that keyword on the page. So you don't even really have to worry about it. If for some strange reason you didn't worry about it, you wrote the page, and you literally did not have a variation of the target keyword in the copy, I think that would be pretty hard to do. But if that was the case, then you would want to revisit the copy and see how you could incorporate that keyword into the copy. I call this the golden rule of relevance. You really want to create a web page that you would want to find if you were personally the one searching that particular keyword. So put yourself in the shoes of the searcher and think about, what is it that you would want in a web page if you were doing that search? What would you what are the questions that you would want answered, and make sure you have all of that information on your page. You can also do some research during this step. Look at the pages that are already ranking and look at what they have on their pages. And ultimately, it comes down to creating a better page than what's already ranking on the first page of Google. All right, so that's the second step, making your site relevant for the keywords you found in step 1. And the third step here is reputation. And if you think about it, the first 2 steps, you've made your website relevant for the keyword, but if you do a search in Google, you might find that there are 100,000 or even millions of other websites that Google thinks is relevant for that keyword search. So then the question is, what makes, or how does Google then rank those hundreds of thousands or millions of web pages in their search results? And the answer is reputation. And your reputation online is what's called your domain authority. So again, if you do a search in Google, I stick with the same example, let's say day spa, Google might have hundreds of thousands, even millions of web pages in their index that are relevant for that search, and then they're going to rank those relevant web pages by their domain authority. And the number one factor of your domain authority or your reputation is the quantity and quality of links. And we mentioned this right at the beginning when I talked about the, how Google's algorithm works. Well, it looks at all those links that you have to your site, and that's basically reputation by association. So if you have a lot of links from other sites that have a good reputation or a strong domain authority, then that will lead to Google thinking that your site also has a strong reputation and a high domain authority. And again, if you have a high domain authority, that's what's going to boost you in the rankings. I mentioned this already, you want to focus on attracting those links versus buying or creating those links. All right, before I get to the final two steps, I want to take a minute and go through those two tactics you can use to get ranked in 30 days or less. And the first one here is what's called piggyback SEO. And now that you understand those first three steps, this will make a lot of sense. What you're basically going to do is piggyback on other high authority websites. A couple examples are YouTube. Google actually owns YouTube. And then PR Web is a press release website that has a strong reputation or high domain authority. But those aren't the only sites you can do this on. I'll show you some examples in a minute. It's basically, this is a great tactic if you're just getting started or you have a website that does not have a high domain authority. You can piggyback on other websites. The way this works is you will publish content. It could be an article or a video or a press release, and you're going to publish that with the target keyword in the title of that content. And I already mentioned when Google looks at a page, they will look at the title of the page, and if the keyword is in the title, then that tells Google that that page is relevant for that search phrase. So here's an example. So you can see this in action. The search here is how to create a Google AdWords campaign. And when I did this screenshot, this article highlighted in red was ranked number 3 on the first page. And it's an article, as you can see, on the domain kissmetrics.com. Now that article was written by me. So I actually wrote that article and then published it on another website, kissmetrics.com. And the title of that article is how to create a profitable Google AdWords campaign from scratch. And because the keyword how to create a Google AdWords campaign, that phrase is in the title, it's basically 100% relevant. Google sees that article as very relevant, and it's on a domain that has a high domain authority, and that's why that article is ranking very high in the search results. And the other example here is the same exact article, but it's a different keyword. So just to kind of prove my point here, got the keyword there, Google AdWords campaign. So someone could search for that phrase. Again, that phrase is in the title of the article. You can see it's highlighted in red at the bottom. It's ranking number 3 again for that keyword. And it's really ranking number 1 other than Google's own web pages, which is, I think, impressive. All right, so that's the first tactic. You can use piggyback SEO, which again is publishing content on other websites that have a strong domain authority. Tactic number 2 is what's called local SEO. And this is relevant for businesses that want to attract local customers, clients, or patients. Unfortunately, this is not relevant for e-commerce businesses, but if you have a service area, let's say that you cater to, and you go to clients in a defined service area, or customers come to you, come to your store or office, then you can use local SEO. Here are some important stats, some recent stats here. 30% of mobile searches are local. 76% of mobile nearby searches actually visit the store. I thought that was an impressive stat. And then 28% of those people that searched for, a hardware store nearby, for example, 28% of those searchers actually ended up making a purchase. So 76% will actually go to the store, and then 28% actually make a purchase. So ranking high in what's called the local results is definitely a way to drive sales. And it's a similar approach, but I do want to emphasize the fact that it is different in that we're talking about your Google My Business profile. We're not just talking about your website. So previously I was talking about SEO, traditional SEO, where you get your website to rank high in Google. With local SEO, where Google's showing a map and they're then showing businesses located on that map, those are Google My Business profile pages. And the 3 steps to get ranked in the map results are, first, you do want to do your keyword research, use Google's keyword tool. Then you want to make your Google My Business page relevant, and that's you do that by picking the right categories. And then you want to build up the reputation of your Google My Business profile, and you do that by getting online reviews. Everyone knows what those are. You get ask your customers to review you on your page. And you also want to get what are called citations, which are just mentions of your business name, address, and phone number. And you can do that by getting listed in a lot of business directories. And just to prove that you can get ranked very quickly, this is a review from Barney. He said, about a month ago I started going through the local SEO steps. I've noticed my Google rankings moving up, and right now I'm at the #1 position for my most important keyword in my area. I'm now receiving phone calls for my listing, and I just started working on a project that came in directly from Google Plus Local. And Google My Business was formerly called Google Plus Local. All right, so what have we learned? We talked about the first 3 steps, the 3 R's: research, relevance, reputation. I talked about the 2 tactics to get ranked in 30 days or less: piggyback SEO and local SEO. And now we'll talk about my favorite R, and that is revenue. And the reason for this step is because it's really a reminder that SEO is not, the goal of SEO is not to get ranked #1 in Google. A lot of people get kind of hung up on that, but the more appropriate goal here is to be generating revenue, generating leads and sales from those rankings. There's really 3 important factors that you need to worry about. You want to have, first and foremost, compelling website copy. If you're ranking #1 and your website copy is lousy and it does a poor job of selling your product or service, then unfortunately you're just not going to drive many leads or sales, and all of that effort in SEO is basically wasted. You want to have social proof on your site. That's to overcome prospects' skepticism. Everyone has skepticism online. It's just the fact of doing business on the internet. So you want to have lots of social proof, testimonials, reviews. And then you want to have a CTA, which stands for call to action. So you want to have a strong call to action on your site. Whatever it is you want your prospects to do, that might be to call you. Make sure you have a phone number that's big, bold, front and center to call. Maybe you want someone to complete a form. Make sure that form visually pops out of the page, so it's very clear what that person is supposed to do. The second item is a lead magnet. And if you're not familiar with that term, it's also called a freemium. It's some free offer on your site that you're going to give in exchange for contact information, primarily email addresses. The reason you need a lead magnet, and really every business should have some kind of lead magnet on their site, and the reason for that is because the vast majority of visitors on your site are not ready to make a purchase. They are coming to your site and they are in more or less research mode or kind of shopping mode. They're not in buying mode. And if you think about it, good conversion rates online are somewhere in the neighborhood of 2%, and it varies, but 5% conversion rate is very, very strong. So that means 95 to 98% to even 99% of your traffic is not making a purchase and is just going to leave your website, and you really won't have any opportunity to bring them back unless you can capture their contact information. So that's why it's strongly recommended to have some kind of lead magnet. That could be a coupon you offer on your site, or it could be free information. If you go to our website, mainstreetroi.com, on our homepage we have the Internet Marketing Survival Guide. Then we have lots of other free offers like an SEO checklist, a Google AdWords checklist. Those are all lead magnets to try to capture contact information, and then we use email marketing to bring those prospects back to our site. And then last but not least, this is related to step one, which is keyword research. You want to make sure you're ranking for those keywords, those buying intent keywords, where your prospective customers are actually searching to make a purchase. And finally, when it comes to revenue, you need to be tracking, and I recommend using Google's free Google Analytics tool. You just go to analytics.google.com. You can get set up for free, and then that will automatically track all the traffic from your SEO efforts, so organic search traffic. And if you set up the goals and conversions in Google Analytics, you'll also see how many leads and sales you're generating from SEO. All right, fifth and final step is responsibility. Ultimately, that's answering the question, who is responsible for your SEO? Are you going to be doing this in-house? Is someone on your team in charge, or are you hiring a consultant or an agency? You need to make that decision. I do want to let you know that SEO is not a set it and forget it strategy. I actually had a conversation yesterday with a prospective client who asked the question, once I optimize my site, what else is there to do? And hopefully it's clear now that you've gone through this training that optimizing your site is related to making your site relevant, and that was step 2, but that doesn't really factor in step 3, which is building up your reputation, and that's really the ongoing work with SEO, is getting those high quality links to your site. We talked about with local SEO, getting those citations, getting those reviews. That's the ongoing work that will continually improve your rankings. And finally, as far as responsibility goes, I recommend to every business that you only delegate SEO after you or someone on your team understands the basics of SEO. And that was the purpose of this training. I wanted to make sure everyone that attended understands kind of the foundations of SEO, how the nuts and bolts work, so that if you are going to hire someone in-house on your team, or you're going to hire a consultant or agency, you have a way to vet them and understand and make sure that they are following best practices. And this slide here, this is not a picture of my kids. I just thought this was a funny picture online. This is to highlight the fact that a lot of businesses get freaked out about Google's updates, and they feel like SEO is always changing, and when it changes, you lose your rankings, and they get scared and kind of get paralyzed into thinking it's not even worth the effort. But the reality is actually the opposite. The Google updates are a good thing. Those are opportunities, and I get excited when Google's making these updates because they're doing that to get rid of the websites that don't belong on the first page of Google. So Google's trying to get rid of those websites that are using those old school tactics who are trying to spam and trick Google. And if you're following the best practices that we just talked about, that will mean Google will get rid of those sites that don't belong, and that leaves room and open spots for you to actually jump up and improve rankings. All right, before we get to Q&A, I do have a special offer, and it's 3 of our step-by-step 90-minute training courses. The first one here is the complete SEO tune-up. And again, you can go to our site, mainstreetroi.com/training, and you can see we sell each of these courses for $97. And we actually do these on a monthly basis. So they're up to date. The second course here is the local SEO formula. And the third course is Introduction to SEO Analytics, and looking at getting Google Analytics set up properly to track, as well as other tracking tools to track your rankings. So you can see, add that up, total value of $291, and you can get everything for only $97 because you attended today. And the URL to claim that special offer is mainstreetroi.com/SEO bundle.
All right. Thanks, Phil. Let's get to some questions here. We had quite a few come in here. First one is, what could a small business expect to spend on a SEO program per month?
So it varies greatly depending on what you're going to do in-house versus what the agency is going to do, and kind of what you need. As far as a ballpark estimate and what our fees are, generally in the neighborhood of $500 a month, and goes up to another standard package would be around $1,000 a month, and goes up from there depending on the size of the business, geographic locations. If you have multiple offices across the U.S., then it could definitely be more.
Okay. One other question we had was, how do you optimize Google My Business using keywords?
So there's 2 areas. So I didn't go too in-depth into local SEO, but there's the first area on Google My Business would be your categories, making sure you're targeting the right categories that match up with what people are actually searching and what you actually offer. And then the other thing to edit is your website, because Google looks at both your Google My Business profile and your website, and you still want to optimize your website for the relevant keywords that you would find during step 1 of keyword research.
Got it. Okay. And last question, and then we'll let Phil go here, is, it says you talked about Google penalizing a website. How can I tell if my website's being penalized, I would assume is what he's saying.
So there's 2 types of penalties. There's a manual action, which is what I showed you. The way you would know about that one is first getting set up in Google Search Console, and you can go to google.com/webmastertools, and that's the page where you get set up with Google Search Console. Google will actually send you alerts if they think you're doing anything a little bit sketchy. And
Okay.
then the other way to know is looking at your Google Analytics account, and if you see your SEO traffic suddenly take a huge dip and kind of falls off a cliff, that's probably going to line up with an algorithm update. and that's the way you would figure out if you were hit by an algorithm penalty.
Got it. Perfect. All right. Well, thanks, Phil, for your time. We're going to wrap up today. For all those that asked if there is a recording going to be available, yes, there will be. We'll be contacting you via email and phone, and we can provide that video recording. The slides are not available, but the recording is. So we had a couple of those type of questions. But we want to thank everyone who attended today. I really appreciate Phil and all of his time and effort he spent into it. It was a great presentation. And I look for an email for the coming weeks, and we'll have another presentation where hopefully we can have another great presentation. So thanks, everyone, and we'll talk to you later.